The morning sun drags long shadows across Fort Harrison, turning frost to a thin glitter on the grass. The formation stretches 200 strong, ranks squared, chins tucked, breath rising in white plumes. Boots crunch in unison. The air is knife-cold and clean. Colonel Marcus Reynolds stands at the front like a statue carved from rank and routine. 6'3", uniform creased into geometry, silver eagles bright enough to blind. His voice slices through the chill. Listen up. Today isn't cardio, it's character. Your fitness tells me your readiness. No excuses. No exceptions. You'll finish what you start. Heads nod. Some with fear. Some with pride. Most with habit. Near the edge of the formation, Cadence Row blends into the sea of uniforms, slight frame, neat bun, eyes calm. To most, she's a clerk, quiet, efficient, safely stationed behind a desk. Paperwork with a pulse. Push-ups begin. The rows drop like dominoes. Palms hit frozen ground, elbows piston. Steam ripples up from bodies working hard. At 15, Cadence adjusts her stance, finding balance the way you find rhythm after a song changes key. At 21, her jaw tightens. At 25, she stops. She rises, steps out of line, and walks toward Reynolds. The formation feels that motion like a ripple through still water. Sir, she says, voice steady, request exemption. Old injuries are acting up. A thin smile cuts the colonel's face, more blade than warmth. Old injuries, he repeats, loud enough for the back row to hear. His gaze sweeps her small frame with surgical disdain. What are we talking about, specialist? Paper cuts? Filing cramps? Laughter bumps through the ranks. Not cruel at first, just eager to be on the safe side of a joke. A few shoulders shake. A few boots scuff the ground. Reynolds spreads his hands as if presenting a lesson. You've gone soft behind a desk. Out here, we don't have exceptions. We have standards. Real soldiers meet them. The laughter grows teeth. Cadence doesn't flinch. She doesn't argue. She simply nods once, as if cataloging the entire scene for a later report, and kneels to unfasten her jacket. She folds it carefully, edges aligned. The wind lifts a corner and lets it fall again. She rolls her shoulders, rolls her sleeves, and looks not at the colonel, but through the formation, as if weighing something heavier than insult. A hush spreads. Even the crows on the perimeter fence go quiet. She reaches for her left trouser leg and rolls the fabric up. For a heartbeat, no one understands what they're seeing. The brain wants to overlay the expected picture, flesh, calf, boot. But the morning light flashes off something not meant to be hidden, only worn, steel and carbon fiber, smooth curves sculpted for endurance and speed. The limb ends above the knee, the prosthetic locks into place with an audible, final click. A gasp travels the line like a fuse. Laughter dies mid-breath. A private swallows too loudly. Someone mutters God, and leaves the rest unsaid. Reynolds doesn't move. He's seen prosthetics before, at ceremonies, hospital wards, the back rooms of briefings that end with a folded flag. He knows what they cost. He also knows what it means to still be here, standing in formation, wearing the same uniform after all of it. Cadence rests her hands lightly at her sides. She does not cover the prosthetic. She does not explain. Her eyes are steady, almost serene, as if the hardest part of today already happened years ago. On the second row, Sergeant First Class Maria Rodriguez feels her throat close. She's led soldiers through deployments and funerals and the complicated, unfinished grief of coming home different. She murmurs, "That's not an office leg." Wind brushes the field. The frost is melting. Reynolds' jaw works once, twice. The clipboard in his hand creaks where his fingers tighten. When he finally speaks, the bite is gone from his voice, replaced by something heavier. "Specialist Row," he says. "Where did you get that injury?" Cadence meets his eyes, neither defiant nor meek, just honest. "Classified, sir." The word lands like a gavel. Not a boast. A boundary. Silence holds. 200 soldiers stand in the cold, staring at a woman they thought they knew. The story they told themselves about her, about weakness, about exceptions, crumbles quietly, like frost under a boot. Cadence breathes in. The air is sharp. The sun climbs a little higher. Not every wound is visible, she says, voice even. And not every fight ends when the mission does. Reynolds looks at the obstacle course, walls, ropes, beams, a cargo net waiting like a final verdict. When he turns back, something in his eyes has shifted from scorn to calculation. Row, he says, each syllable measured. You're excused from the assessment. A murmur ripples. Relief from some. Confusion from others. Then he adds, if you're able, demonstrate the course. The murmur becomes a shockwave. Heads whip toward the obstacles. Toward Cadence. Toward the man who just turned a morning fitness test into a reckoning. Cadence glances at the course. Then at the formation. Then back to Reynolds. She nods once. The silence after Reynolds' challenge weighed heavier than the cold. 200 soldiers stood in formation, their breath fogging the morning air, but no one dared speak. The obstacle course stretched across the field, half a mile of punishing wood, steel, and rope designed to break the strongest. And now all eyes were on Cadence Row. Some thought the colonel cruel. Others thought he was right, proof or nothing. But Cadence showed no hesitation. She adjusted the cuff of her trousers around the prosthetic, tested the lock with a quiet click, and walked toward the starting line. A whisper ran through the formation. She can't do this. No way. That's suicide with one leg. Colonel Reynolds barked, formation, stand fast. His gaze never left her. He had thrown down the gauntlet, and now, to his surprise, she had picked it up. Cadence crouched briefly, brushing her palm across the frost on the first obstacle, a 12-foot wall. The wood was slick, unforgiving. A soldier with 2 legs needed muscle and timing. A soldier with 1? Impossible, unless you had lived in the impossible. She placed her hands, pushed off the ground, and planted the prosthetic against the surface. Metal met wood with a solid thunk. Her body moved like she had rehearsed the motion 1,000 times. In a heartbeat, she was on top. The gasp from the formation was audible. Private Miller muttered, "No damn way." Rodriguez crossed her arms, whispering, "Watch her. Just watch." Cadence dropped down the other side, landing lightly. Her face remained calm, eyes fixed forward. The next obstacles came in sequence, balance beams, rope swings, hurdles. She adapted to each one with precision, sometimes slower, but always deliberate. Where others would have relied on brute force, she used momentum, leverage, timing. By the third station, soldiers who once laughed now leaned forward unconsciously, willing her through. Reynolds' jaw flexed. He wanted to find fault, to prove her fragility. Instead, he found himself studying her form, cataloging each adaptation. This wasn't improvisation. It was training. Specialized training. As Cadence sprinted toward the rope climb, frost crunching beneath her boots, the tension in the air doubled. The rope hung 20 feet high, swaying slightly in the breeze. Even seasoned infantry dreaded it. She leapt, hands locking around the coarse fibers. Her prosthetic clamped tight against the rope with a metallic snap. The crowd murmured louder. Every pull upward sent a tremor through the rope, through the watching soldiers, through the colonel himself. At 12 feet, her grip slipped. The rope shuddered violently. Gasps tore from the formation. Someone shouted, "She's gonna fall." But Cadence didn't. She adjusted, shifted her weight, drove the carbon fiber into the rope like an anchor, and climbed again. Slow, unyielding. Sweat dripped from her temple. Her arms trembled, but her eyes stayed locked upward. At the top, she paused. For a heartbeat, she wasn't just a clerk or a wounded soldier. She was something else, something every soldier watching wished they had been in their darkest moment, unbroken. She swung her leg over and sat astride the rope beam, looking down at the stunned faces below. For the first time that morning, the formation erupted, not with laughter, but with cheers. "Row! Row! Row!" Even Rodriguez shouted, her voice rough with pride. Cadence didn't smile. She simply descended the rope with controlled ease and set her boots back on the ground. Ahead, the final challenge loomed, the cargo net. 40 feet tall. The last gatekeeper of the course. The cheering quieted as quickly as it had risen. Everyone knew this obstacle had claimed more failures than all others combined. Colonel Reynolds folded his arms, hiding the strange tightness in his chest. He had challenged her to prove herself, expecting her to fail. Instead, she had proved something else, something he hadn't yet named. Cadence took a deep breath, eyes on the net. And then she began to climb. The cargo net loomed above her like a fortress wall. 40 feet of course rope, swaying slightly in the breeze, every knot and crossing point daring her to fail. Even the strongest soldiers dreaded it. Some froze halfway, some quit before touching the top. Cadence Row didn't hesitate. She gripped the rope and began to climb. The formation held its breath. 200 pairs of eyes followed every movement, every adjustment of her prosthetic against the rope. Metal groaned softly with each step, locking into place, releasing, locking again. The sound was strange, almost mechanical, but to the soldiers watching, it became a rhythm, steady and relentless. Private Miller whispered, "No way she makes it." Rodriguez shot him a glare. "Shut it. She's not stopping." 10 feet. 15. 20. Her breath came hard now, fog spilling from her lips. Sweat slid down her temple, cutting through the frost clinging to her skin. She didn't look down. Not once. By 30 feet, the rope shivered beneath her weight, swaying in the morning wind. Her muscles trembled, arms screaming, prosthetic joint clicking louder. Every soldier in the formation could hear it, the sound of a body being pushed beyond its limit. "Come on, Row," someone shouted. Another voice joined. "Push it." Then another. And another. Within moments, the field that once laughed now roared. "Row! Row! Row!" The chant thundered across the training ground, vibrating in her bones. For a second, Cadence allowed herself to feel it, the weight of their voices carrying her higher. At 38 feet, her prosthetic slipped. The metal joint screeched against the rope, sending a shock through the entire net. Gasps shot through the crowd. A few soldiers flinched, as if she were already falling. Colonel Reynolds' stomach lurched. He knew a fall from that height could cripple or kill. His hand twitched toward a whistle, instinct begging him to end it. But he stopped. Something in Cadence's eyes, sharp even from below, told him, "Don't interfere." She dangled for a heartbeat, one leg clamped tight, hands gripping raw rope, body swaying in open air. The crowd fell silent again. Then she growled through clenched teeth and slammed the prosthetic back into place. The carbon fiber locked, steadying her. Slowly, steadily, she climbed the last 2 feet. At the top, she didn't raise her arms. She didn't shout. She simply hooked an arm over the final beam and looked down at the soldiers below. Her face was calm, almost serene, as if she hadn't just defied everything they believed about strength. The formation exploded. Cheering, clapping, shouting her name. Even the officers on the sidelines found themselves applauding. Rodriguez felt her throat tighten, pride burning in her chest. Cadence descended with measured precision, step by step, until her boots hit solid ground again. She stood tall, breathless but unbowed, the prosthetic glinting in the morning sun. Reynolds stared at her for a long moment, clipboard forgotten in his grip. He had mocked her hours ago, dismissed her as weak, a clerk with excuses. Now, standing there, she had just dismantled his definition of what a soldier was. He opened his mouth to speak. And froze. A voice cut across the field, sharp, commanding, not his. "Specialist Row, hold position." Heads turned. A figure in dark uniform, not from their base, strode toward the course. No insignia on his collar, only a badge clipped inside his jacket. His presence shifted the air itself, heavy, deliberate, unmistakable. The colonel's face drained of color. He recognized the man immediately. The soldiers fell silent again, confused, uneasy. The stranger's eyes locked on Cadence. "You're coming with me," he said. The field was frozen in silence. 200 soldiers who moments ago cheered now stood stiff, unsure whether to salute or hold their breath. The man cutting across the training ground wore no unit patch, no rank insignia, only a dark jacket, boots that whispered authority, and a badge that gleamed when the sun caught it. Colonel Reynolds' expression shifted from confusion to unease. He lowered his clipboard, his tone sharper than before. "Agent Kessler," Reynolds said. "This is my command. What business do you have here?" The man, Kessler, barely acknowledged him. His eyes, cold and unyielding, stayed locked on Cadence Row. "She's mine." A ripple moved through the ranks. Soldiers glanced at each other, at Reynolds, at Cadence. The word didn't sound like ownership. It sounded like claim, like a door suddenly opened to a place no one wanted to enter. Cadence didn't move. Her breath still came hard from the climb, chest rising and falling, but her posture was steady. "What division are you with?" she asked calmly. Kessler's lips twitched, the faintest ghost of a smile. "The kind that doesn't exist on paper." A chill swept across the field, sharper than the October air. Rodriguez muttered under her breath, "Black Ops." The word was taboo, rarely spoken aloud. Reynolds stepped forward, shoulders squared. "She's my soldier. She belongs to this command. If you've got orders, show them." Kessler slid a sealed envelope from his jacket and handed it over. The wax insignia was unlike anything the formation had ever seen, no eagle, no flag, no branch. Just a single black star. Reynolds broke the seal, read the first line, and his jaw clenched. The orders were genuine. Higher than M. Untouchable. Cadence's gaze didn't waver. "So this is what it comes down to. I climb a net, and suddenly ghosts come calling." Kessler's eyes narrowed. "You weren't meant to stay hidden forever, specialist. People like you," he gestured toward her prosthetic. "Don't come back and ask for a desk. You come back because you're not finished." Murmurs swept the formation. Soldiers who had mocked her that morning now looked at her with something closer to fear. Reynolds folded the orders, voice low but heavy. "Row, you're being reassigned effective immediately. Temporary detachment." He forced the words out like stones in his throat. "Classified directive." Cadence let the silence hang for a beat, then spoke evenly. "And if I refuse?" Kessler's smile widened, humorless. "Then we remind you of the contract you signed. You didn't just swear to serve, you swore to be available. Always." Her jaw flexed, but she didn't break eye contact. "What mission?" Kessler leaned in just enough for only she and Reynolds to hear. His whisper was a blade, the kind that never makes the news. For the first time all morning, a flicker crossed Cadence's calm face, not fear, but recognition. She knew. The formation stood still, unaware of what had passed between them. Rodriguez saw the shift in Cadence's eyes and felt her stomach tighten. Kessler straightened. "You've got 24 hours. Pack what you need. After that, you belong to us." He turned and walked away, leaving silence in his wake. Every soldier stared at Cadence. She stood alone at the foot of the cargo net, prosthetic gleaming, frost melting beneath her boots. Reynolds finally spoke, voice lower, almost reluctant. "Row, what the hell did you get yourself into?" Cadence didn't answer. Her eyes stayed on the horizon, where Kessler had vanished. Because deep down, she already knew this wasn't the beginning of something new. It was the return of something she thought she had buried. That night, Fort Harrison seemed quieter than usual. The chow hall buzzed with whispers, the barracks hummed with speculation, but the name on everyone's lips was the same, Cadence Row. Rodriguez found her sitting alone on the steps outside admin headquarters, jacket folded neatly beside her, prosthetic leg catching the glow of a distant floodlight. "Specialist," Rodriguez said softly, "mind if I sit?" Cadence nodded. The sergeant lowered herself down, exhaling hard. For a long moment, they said nothing. The night air carried only the sound of insects and the far-off hum of generators. Finally, Rodriguez broke the silence. "I've seen a lot of things in my time. I've seen soldiers come back with scars, with nightmares. But you," she hesitated, choosing her words, "you climb like a ghost that refuses to die. Where'd you learn that?" Cadence's lips curved, but it wasn't quite a smile. "Not here. Not on any map you've ever seen." Rodriguez studied her face. "Black Ops?" Cadence didn't confirm. Didn't deny. Her silence was answer enough. Rodriguez leaned forward. "They're saying this agent, Kessler, he's from a division that doesn't officially exist. And he came straight for you. Why?" Cadence's eyes flickered toward the horizon. "Because I wasn't supposed to live. And because the mission that should have killed me isn't over." Rodriguez felt a chill. "You mean the one that cost you your leg?" Cadence nodded slowly. The memory flashed behind her eyes, unbidden, sandstorms whipping across a nameless desert, gunfire echoing through canyons, the deafening roar of an explosion that tore through her convoy. The screaming silence that followed. And then, darkness. "They sent us after something buried," she whispered. "Something we weren't meant to find. Half the unit never came back. The other half, well, you've seen me." She tapped the metal joint of her prosthetic. "I thought burying myself in admin work would keep it buried too." Rodriguez's voice was low. "But now they've come to dig it up." Cadence didn't answer. She didn't need to. The next morning, rumors spread like wildfire. Soldiers claimed they saw Row packing gear that didn't belong to an office clerk, combat boots reinforced with steel, a rucksack designed for long-range recon, a sidearm holster polished from use. Colonel Reynolds summoned her before first light. His office smelled of coffee and tension. The sealed orders lay on his desk like a scar across the wood. "You're being taken out of my command," Reynolds said flatly. "Temporary detachment. Classified." He leaned forward, voice heavy. "But answer me this, Row. What the hell makes you so important that they would come here for you?" Cadence's gaze stayed steady. "Because I already know the ground they're sending me back to. And because no one else walked out of it alive." Reynolds froze. The weight of her words sank into the room like lead. Before he could respond, a sharp knock rattled the office door. Kessler entered without waiting for permission. His presence filled the space like smoke. "Time's up," he said. "She's coming with me." Reynolds stood, bristling. "She's still my soldier until..." Kessler dropped a dossier on the desk. The folder bore the same Black Star insignia. Pages slid open, filled with blurred photographs, satellite images, and one chilling word stamped across the top: reactivation. Cadence felt her chest tighten. She knew those coordinates. She knew what lay there. Reynolds' voice dropped to a whisper. "God help us." Kessler looked at Cadence. "Gear up. Wheels up in 2 hours." For the first time since the obstacle course, Cadence's calm cracked. Not fear. Recognition. Because whatever mission was waiting for her, it was the same one that had taken her leg. The airfield beyond Fort Harrison was quiet at dawn, the sky painted in streaks of orange and steel. A single transport plane waited on the tarmac, engines humming, its tail marked not with a unit insignia but the same Black Star that burned on Kessler's dossier. Cadence Row walked toward it with her rucksack slung across one shoulder, each step measured, deliberate. Her fatigues looked the same as any other soldier's, but the weight she carried was not visible. Not on her back. Not on her prosthetic. It lived in her chest. Colonel Reynolds intercepted her halfway to the plane. His face, usually carved from stone, looked older, heavier. For the first time since she had known him, his voice carried no mockery. "Row," he said, lowering his tone so only she could hear, "I misjudged you. Badly. And I don't apologize easily." Cadence met his gaze, her expression steady. "Apology noted, sir. But unnecessary." Reynolds shook his head. "No, it's not. What you did yesterday, it showed me what real soldiering is. And what I've lost touch with." He glanced at Kessler, standing at the ramp like a shadow waiting to claim her. His jaw tightened. "But I don't like handing over one of mine to people who play in the dark." Cadence's lips curved faintly. "Neither do I. But sometimes the dark doesn't ask permission." Reynolds exhaled, long and slow. "Then promise me something. Whatever they're sending you back into, come out again. Walk out. Don't let them write you off as expendable." She adjusted the strap on her ruck. "I don't plan on being expendable twice." They shared a brief nod, soldier to soldier. No ranks. No walls. Just recognition. Kessler's voice cut the moment short. "Time's up. Let's move." Cadence climbed the ramp, the steel echoing under her boots. Inside, the plane was stripped bare, no unit markings, no insignia, just black webbing along the walls and a handful of gear crates stamped with classified codes. As the engines roared to life, Kessler tossed her a headset. "Mission brief in the air." She caught it one-handed, slid it on, and braced herself. The hum of the engines became white noise as Kessler's voice filled her ear. "You're going back to the same coordinates where you lost your leg. The desert. The canyon. You know it better than anyone alive." Cadence's stomach tightened. "That ground's cursed. Half my team died there. The rest," she tapped the prosthetic with 2 fingers. "Paid in pieces." Kessler's expression didn't change. "Exactly. Which makes you the only one qualified to finish what was started." She stared at him, eyes narrowing. "Finish what, exactly?" Kessler leaned forward, slid a grainy photograph across the crate between them. The image was satellite-grade, an aerial shot of the canyon she knew too well. But in the center of the frame was something new. Something that hadn't been there years ago. A black scar against the earth. Angular. Metallic. Cadence's breath caught. "That wasn't ours." Kessler's voice was low, almost a whisper. "No. And it wasn't theirs either." The plane jolted as it lifted off, climbing into the sky. Cadence gripped the edge of her seat, her pulse thundering. Because she realized the truth. The explosion that took her leg hadn't been an accident. It had been a cover-up. The desert greeted Cadence with silence. At dawn, she stood at the canyon rim where her unit had once fallen. Below lay a black, half-buried structure, smooth, metallic, unnatural. Kessler's voice cut the air. "It wasn't built by us. Or them. Your team died trying to erase it. Now you'll finish the job." Cadence's chest tightened. The explosion that had taken her leg had been no accident. It was a cover-up. An operator handed her a suppressed sidearm, silent, surgical. She waited, eyes narrowing. "You don't want me to secure it. You want me to erase it." Kessler didn't answer. He didn't need to. Cadence clipped her harness, stepping toward the ropes that led down into the canyon. The sun caught her prosthetic, flashing like a blade. She wasn't a clerk. She wasn't broken. She was walking back into the fire.